to setting up the back squat, let's briefly talk about why these bar cushions get such a bad rap. Now in my opinion, they're probably hated a lot more than they should be in the fitness community, and if you're an absolute beginner when it comes to the back squat, who really just wants to give the technique a go, but you find the bar extremely uncomfortable first time trying, then I wouldn't really have a problem with you using a bar cushion just to get that bar on your back to see how it feels in a squat. That being said, the bar cushion does pose some problems when it comes to back squat form. So first of all, when using a bar cushion, what tends to happen is instead of resting the bar on the traps, the bar gets pushed up, instead rests on the back of the neck, which is something we definitely don't want, as not only could it cause you neck issues, but it puts the weight more forward and cause you to lean forward, messing up your squat technique and possibly putting you in danger of injury. Now it is possible to rest the bar cushion on the traps rather than the neck like I am doing here, but due to the bigger surface area of the bar cushion, I can see how once you've loaded the bar up with some big weights, it's going to be a lot harder to keep that bar on those traps in that position and may risk falling off and be really dangerous when lifting heavy. More importantly though, what I tend to find is when you actually learn to set up your back squat properly and spending some time under the bar, slowly building up weight, you actually get to a place where you don't want to use a bar cushion because the bar feels a lot more comfortable and stable across the traps and no longer feels uncomfortable because you spent time and you've got used to the bar being in that position. There is a high bar back squat and a low bar back squat. Most people automatically go for the high bar back squat because it's a less advanced exercise as well as being slightly more comfortable at first, even though some people will probably suit a low bar back squat depending on their anatomy. But we're going to start with a high bar back squat. The first thing you want to do is get the bar at the right height. We don't want to go very low, so we're having to do a big squat just to get the bar off the rack. We also don't want it too high, so we can't lift it off the rack. However, it's better to go too low than too high, especially when you're going for big weights, where I can get underneath it with bent legs, stand it up straight, and then take a step back. The next important thing is which way to face. You always want to face the rack. This is because when putting the bar back, it's so much easier to put the bar back when you're facing the rack, so you can look side to side and slide it in position, compared to not only having to walk backwards with a big bar on your back, but also get it at the right height and even on both sides, which is a lot harder to do when it's behind you. So once you've got the bar in front of you, you want to go hands equal distance away from the middle of the bar. Now pretty much all bars have areas of knurling and smoother areas, so you should be able to easily find areas where you want to place your hands. When it comes to the best position, you preferably want to go as close as you can whilst being in a comfortable position when you get under the bar itself. So for me that would be a position like here. However, you may not have the same ability as me and need to go wider, or you may even feel more comfortable on a closer position. So how wide you have your hands going to be preferable to you. What's going to be important is getting them as close as you can to really create some tension in the back and keep that back nice and strong. So for example, what I do here, I line my thumbs up with this crossover of knurling to smooth. I'm going to wrap the hands, dip my head under, trying to keep it as level as possible. I've got the benefit of having a mirror in front of me so that I can see that my hands and head position are even on either side. But the main thing is if you stand it up and it just doesn't feel right, best thing to do is put it straight back down, reset your position and then go again. Now in terms of where the bar is going to rest, it's going to rest on your trap muscles here. Now obviously everyone has different sized trap muscles, but no one doesn't have any trap muscles. So when you get in the right position to squeeze on, you will create the trap muscles to push up slightly so the bar can rest there across the back, creating like a little shelf position for the bar without the bar putting any pressure on the spine. To expose those traps, we're going to be squeezing backwards and down with those elbows, pulling the elbows behind us and creating a lot of tension and holding here. Then those traps are going to stick up here like so, and that's exactly where I'm looking to rest the bar. So when I'm here, I'm squeezing nice and tight backwards. I can feel that the bar is on the cushiony part of my traps and there's no pressure on my spine, and I'm going to lift that bar off when I feel that way, and then I'm going to keep that tension on in the upper back so that there's that shelf there for the bar at all times when I'm performing that squat. Now this isn't going to feel super comfortable and natural straight away, even if you are in the perfect position. So give it some time, practice with a bar and build up the weight slowly until you become a lot more comfortable resting it on those traps and squeezing back, engaging that upper back. So the high bar squat that I just demonstrated is best for people that can keep nice and upright throughout that movement. Now I mentioned anatomy earlier because it can have a great effect on how you can perform a squat. So the length of your femur, the length of your torso, or the functionality of your hips will really affect how you can perform a squat. Some people find it really easy to keep upright and hit a real low depth squat without any kind of hinging forward, more like a deadlift. They can easily sit into those hips, into that pocket with no issue whatsoever. For others it may be really hard, if not physically impossible to do that because of their anatomy, and their chest drops a lot lower and they kind of fall forwards into this position rather than keeping upright into that tall position. Now that can be caused by lack of mobility too, so make sure that isn't the case for you by working your range of motion and not jumping into back squats when you aren't ready to perform them. However, if you do really struggle performing a high bar squat and you think it's because of how your body is made up, then you may want to try a low bar back squat. But the way squats work is that you want to keep the bar over your center of mass. So if I'm here and performing a high back squat, it's sitting on the traps here, so I need to squat so that that bar kind of stays in the center of my position when I'm squatting. Now if you naturally lean forward because of your anatomy, having a low bar position, so it kind of sits a bit lower back here, it's easier for me to maintain that bar over my center of mass when performing a squat. Now the main problem with the low bar squat is that it's quite an uncomfortable position to get in at first, even more so than the high bar squat. So what I do recommend is really work on your squat in other areas away from the bar before you give this a go. So perfecting your goblet squat or even a crucifix or front squat using the bar may really help you train your legs without ever having to do a low bar squat, or at least get you in a position where you really need to do a low bar squat. I do not recommend rushing into it. However, if you do want to give it a go, the main difference is where the bar sits. Instead of using the traps as your shelf, what you're going to do for the low bar squat is using the rear deltoids. So your deltoid muscle here, when I squeeze back, you create another shelf with the rear deltoid sticking back here. Now the low bar squat, because of this, you're going to have to go wider with the hands, which is why a lot of people who struggle with shoulder mobility also prefer a low bar squat, because they can get their hands wider whilst being in the right position. That said, if the only reason you're performing a low bar squat is because you lack shoulder mobility, then I do recommend working on that. But the same rule applies where you want your hands as close together as you can whilst being able to get into that position. So my hands are a bit wider here. I'm going to bring myself under the bar, and rather than sit on the traps, I'm going to sit lower. I'm going to squeeze my elbows back further. I'm going to test if I can get my hands a bit closer together, which I can, and I'm going to lift it off here. Now you can see that my elbows are sticking back further, but there's that shelf that I'm creating with the rear deltoids rather than the traps. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of the difference, which isn't much. So here's my rear deltoid position, whereas I push it up, here is my trap position. Like I say, it's not a big movement, but what it does allow you to do is to squat whilst hinging more at the hips. So we don't want the chest and head to fall down. We want to keep that chest up, more big of an arch in the back. We're still going to engage that core, so we're not putting any pressure on the back. And then it's going to allow me to drop that chest down further while keeping that bar in the center of my position.